I never thought this day would feel like a punch to the stomach, Emma whispered under her breath as she stepped onto the chilly sidewalk, the morning sun cutting across her face in sharp, golden streaks. The courthouse doors had just closed behind her, and the echo of the gavel still lingered in her mind, a faint but relentless reminder that her marriage with Jason was legally over. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the strap of her tote bag, pulling her coat tighter around her shoulders. Across the street, Jason's laughter carried in the crisp air, bright and arrogant, and Emma's eyes flicked to the small figure beside him, Olivia, her arm looped confidently through his, radiant and smug. Emma's stomach twisted, not with anger but with a piercing awareness of how much control she had just lost, or so it seemed. She let her gaze linger for a moment, memorizing the infuriating ease with which they moved together, the way Jason's grin stretched with self-satisfaction. Then she turned, letting her heels click against the pavement in a slow, deliberate rhythm, each step a small reclaiming of herself. Flashbacks intruded. The photograph on their wedding day, smiles wide but eyes hiding uncertainty. The quiet nights she had spent worrying about his late returns. The whispered apologies and promises that now felt hollow and distant. Emma inhaled deeply, the cold air filling her lungs and steadying her pulse. She walked past the rows of trees lining the street, their leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, a calm soundtrack to her racing thoughts. She remembered the mornings when sunlight had danced across their kitchen table, coffee steam curling like a soft promise, now replaced by the bitter taste of betrayal. Emma's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly, as a sense of strategy began to replace the sting of humiliation. She had watched, had understood, and now she was ready to plan, not react. The city moved around her in a blur of muted colors and distant honks, yet inside her mind, every detail was sharp. The tilt of Jason's head, the way Olivia's laughter rang with false triumph, the shimmer of sunlight on the courthouse steps, where they had signed. The papers that ended everything. Emma's hands found the edges of her tote again, gripping it with quiet determination, her thoughts shifting from loss to potential, from the past to the possibilities that awaited. There was no dramatic confrontation here, no shouting, no tears, just a quiet, simmering awareness that she could still control the narrative, that she could rewrite her story in ways they couldn't anticipate. As she walked further, the shadow of the courthouse shrinking behind her, Emma felt the first taste of freedom, sharp and intoxicating. The world seemed suddenly wide, filled with streets she had not yet walked, with chances unclaimed, with a future she would shape on her own terms. And in that moment, beneath the piercing morning sun, with the sounds of the city playing around her, she understood a truth that was both simple and profound. Humiliation was temporary, but the power to reclaim oneself was enduring, and she was just beginning to rise. Emma woke up to the soft morning light filtering through the cafe window, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air around her. She moved with purpose, her hands steady as she arranged the pastries and checked the orders for the day, her mind already running through the tasks ahead. The city outside was beginning to stir, cars rolling past and pedestrians hurrying along the sidewalks, yet inside the small cafe, there was a quiet rhythm, a sense of order and calm that Emma had built for herself. She smiled faintly at a regular customer, a gentle nod exchanged, and then turned back to the counter, her thoughts wandering to the possibilities that lay ahead. The pain of the past still lingered, a subtle shadow behind her eyes, but it no longer dictated her steps. Instead, it fueled a determination, a quiet insistence that she would craft her life on her own terms. Later in the afternoon, a new face appeared among the tables, a man with an air of quiet confidence, dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of success without the need for display. Emma noticed him immediately, not out of curiosity, but out of a practiced attention to detail, the same attention that had guided her through countless challenges before. He ordered a coffee, simple and unassuming, and sat near the window, his eyes scanning a tablet as if he were calculating, assessing, learning. Emma returned to her duties, observing without overt attention, letting her presence be casual, yet every move precise, every gesture controlled. As the day progressed, the city sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the wooden floor, and the light softened against the walls, highlighting the familiar corners of the space Emma had shaped into a sanctuary. She paused for a moment, leaning against the counter, fingers brushing the edge as she watched him glance up, a slight smile acknowledging her awareness without words. A connection formed in the quietest of ways, subtle but undeniable, a shared understanding of strategy, patience, and timing. Emma knew she was preparing not only for the challenges that lay ahead, but also for the opportunity to re-enter a world that had once tried to define her. She felt the weight of her past, but also the potential of the future, a duality that energized her with each careful step she took. Closing time approached, and the streets outside took on a softer glow, the city humming with life, unknowing of the silent plans being drawn inside the small cafe. Emma wiped the counters, arranged the chairs with deliberate care, and took a final look around, the satisfaction of creation settling deep in her chest. She understood that this was more than a place to serve coffee. It was a stage, a preparation ground, a rehearsal for the precise movements that would soon change everything. The man by the window gathered his things, leaving a card on the table with a discreet note, a silent invitation that would later intertwine their paths. Emma tucked the card into her pocket without haste, a small smirk playing on her lips, the first spark of anticipation lighting her mind. As the door closed behind him, she exhaled slowly, a quiet confidence replacing the tension of the past, knowing that the steps she took now were hers alone, deliberate and powerful. The city lights flickered on as evening approached, reflections dancing across the cafe windows, hinting at opportunities waiting beyond the familiar walls, and Emma allowed herself a moment of contemplation, savoring the calm before the inevitable storm, understanding that every detail she nurtured, every interaction she observed, was shaping a return that would be noticed, respected, and unavoidable. The evening gala buzzed with conversation, the soft clink of glasses and low hum of laughter filling the grand hall. Emma stepped through the doors, the dim chandelier light catching the subtle shimmer of her dress, each step measured, deliberate, commanding without a word. She scanned the room, noting familiar faces, observing without revealing recognition, and then her eyes landed on Jason, talking animatedly with Olivia near the center of the crowd. The sight of them together, confident and seemingly untouchable, might have unsettled anyone else, but Emma felt only calm precision in her chest, a steady pulse of anticipation. She allowed herself a slow, deliberate smile, the corners of her lips lifting just enough to hint at knowledge Jason did not possess. Her gaze shifted to a figure beside her, Ethan, poised and discreet, yet exuding an undeniable authority that drew subtle attention without announcement. Emma adjusted the strap of her clutch, feeling the weight of the card Ethan had left her that afternoon, a quiet symbol of the alignment now unfolding. Conversations flowed around her, but she was attuned only to the rhythm of movements that mattered. The tilt of Jason's head as he laughed, Olivia's bright, unguarded smile, the way guests gravitated in his orbit, unaware of the shift about to occur. Emma stepped forward, each motion fluid, confident, and yet measured, a silent statement in itself. She approached the center of the room with an air of inevitability, nodding politely to acquaintances and letting the occasional compliment pass through her with practiced grace, her mind calculating timing, impact, and effect. Jason's eyes flicked to her, curiosity mingled with unease, and Olivia's posture shifted slightly, sensing an imperceptible change in energy, but unsure of its origin. At that precise moment, Ethan stepped beside Emma, a subtle hand brushing hers as a signal, a quiet acknowledgement of the presence of power that had been hidden until now. Emma raised her glass in a small, courteous gesture toward the crowd, and conversations momentarily paused as her presence was acknowledged, not for volume or announcement, but for the elegance of control she now embodied. Jason's confident smile faltered just enough, Olivia's eyes widening imperceptibly, and the room's attention shifted in subtle currents toward Emma and Ethan, a movement that could not be ignored. Emma tilted her head, letting her expression convey a calm, unspoken declaration. She had returned on her terms, unshaken, unhurried, and strategically positioned. The soft click of her heels against the marble floor punctuated the subtle tension in the air, each sound a reminder that she was no longer merely a figure from the past, but an active force in the present. As the night progressed, conversations resumed, but the impact of her entrance lingered, a quiet reverberation that only those attuned could perceive. Emma exchanged a few words with Ethan, their interaction brief, yet loaded with the knowledge of alignment and authority, and then allowed the moment to pass, observing reactions with patience and clarity. She did not need to confront Jason with words or gestures. The room itself, the placement of allies, and the recognition of influence conveyed the narrative she had constructed. As the gala continued under the glittering chandeliers, Emma stood near the edge of the dance floor, a figure of composure and subtle power, each breath measured, each glance intentional, allowing the unfolding drama to demonstrate her presence. She understood that true victory was quiet, authoritative, and undeniable, a truth that would ripple through the evening and extend far beyond it, leaving Jason and Olivia to witness the unspoken shift in control, a strategic and elegant reclamation of space and recognition that was entirely hers. The following morning, Emma walked along the quiet streets of the city, the sunlight brushing against her face and illuminating the determination in her eyes. The cafe behind her hummed with the first customers of the day, steam rising from mugs and the soft murmur of conversation creating a familiar rhythm that grounded her. She carried a leather portfolio, her steps measured and deliberate, each click of her heels on the pavement echoing the silent resolve she had nurtured since the night of the gala. Every detail of her routine was precise, a reflection of the control she had reclaimed over her life, and yet her mind was alert to the possibilities that awaited beyond the familiar sidewalks. As she passed the park where the golden leaves swirled gently in the morning breeze, she noticed Ethan waiting by a bench, his posture casual but his eyes sharp, taking in the surroundings with the keen awareness of someone accustomed to strategy and influence. They exchanged a nod, subtle but loaded with understanding, and Emma felt a sense of alignment that had been absent in her life for years. Together, they walked through the bustling avenues, their conversation light yet purposeful, touching on plans, potential contacts, and upcoming events, all layered with the unspoken awareness of the stakes involved. The world moved around them in a blur of motion and sound, cars honking, cyclists weaving past, pedestrians rushing to unknown destinations, yet Emma remained attuned to the smallest details, the angle of a passerby's gaze, the subtle shift in the wind, the reflection of sunlight on a polished window. By late afternoon, they arrived at the location that would serve as the stage for the next phase of her re-entry, a refined office space buzzing with quiet energy, the kind of place where influence moved not through volume, but through careful calculation and presence. Emma stepped inside with calm authority, greeting staff and colleagues with practiced warmth, letting her posture and gaze convey the confidence she carried, aware that every impression she made contributed to the larger picture she was building. Meetings commenced, discussions unfolded, and Emma listened with a keen ear, absorbing information, asking precise questions, and subtly guiding conversations toward opportunities that would later benefit her. She felt the undercurrent of power growing, a silent yet potent force that would soon position her advantageously in ways Jason and Olivia could not anticipate. As the sun began to dip behind the skyline, casting long shadows across the polished floors, Emma paused near the window, fingers lightly tracing the edge of the glass, considering the trajectory of the events yet to come. The alignment with Ethan solidified with each interaction, the quiet confidence between them functioning as a silent strategy, a partnership rooted not in spectacle, but in understanding and timing. She understood the importance of patience, of waiting for the right moment, and yet each step taken during these hours contributed to a momentum that was both deliberate and inevitable. The city lights began to flicker on, reflections dancing across the glass walls, and Emma took a deep breath, feeling a sense of anticipation and readiness. Every choice, every carefully timed movement, every subtle interaction was a piece of the puzzle, and she was acutely aware that her careful planning would culminate in a return that could not be ignored. As she walked back to her cafe, the streets now bathed in the warm glow of early evening, Emma felt a quiet exhilaration, knowing that she was no longer reacting to the world around her but actively shaping it. Her steps were lighter, her mind sharper, and her resolve stronger. The morning's calm interwoven with the energy of impending change, a perfect balance that would guide her next moves with precision and poise. The morning sunlight spilled through the large windows of the cafe, casting long, golden beams across the polished wooden floor and illuminating the delicate steam rising from freshly poured lattes. Emma moved with calm purpose, arranging pastries with careful precision, adjusting chairs and tables as if the entire room were a stage set for her silent reclamation. Outside, the city hummed with life, pedestrians weaving along sidewalks, cyclists threading through traffic, and the occasional car horn punctuating the gentle murmur of urban rhythm. Each detail of her surroundings seemed to feed her sense of strategy, reminding her that control was not given, but observed, calculated, and earned. Ethan arrived without fanfare, stepping lightly into the warm atmosphere, his tailored suit perfectly contrasting with the casual elegance of a cafe. Their eyes met across the room, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them, a shared understanding of plans unfolding in the background. Conversation began softly, touching on opportunities and subtle alliances, each word chosen with the precision of a chess move, each pause deliberate, giving weight to the unspoken influence that hung in the air. Emma served customers with practiced grace, her attention evenly divided between her work and the subtle signals exchanged with Ethan, aware that presence alone could communicate authority as effectively as any speech. The scent of roasted coffee beans mixed with the crisp morning air, grounding her, focusing her thoughts on the tasks and opportunities awaiting her beyond these walls. As the morning progressed, sunlight shifted, glinting off polished surfaces and casting shadows that danced gently across the floor, echoing the rhythm of Emma's steady heartbeat. Every interaction, every glance, every measured gesture contributed to a growing network of influence that she was quietly cultivating, a mosaic of power built through presence, patience, and precision. She observed the city through the glass, noting movement, timing, and reactions, translating these observations into calculated steps that would later yield advantage in situations unseen by those around her. By afternoon, the cafe was alive with patrons, laughter, and the gentle clinking of utensils, yet Emma's focus remained on the subtle currents of influence flowing through each exchange, each smile, each nod, and each conversation she orchestrated with careful attention. Ethan's quiet guidance, his presence alongside her, reinforced the strategies that she had been silently developing, his insight complementing her intuition and careful planning. As the sun began to tilt westward, casting a warm glow across the room, Emma paused, allowing herself a moment of reflection. She traced her fingers across the surface of the counter, feeling the weight of deliberate decisions and potential outcomes, understanding that the careful cultivation of relationships, timing, and presence was now paving the way for a return that would be impactful and unmistakable. The cafe, once a refuge, had become both a laboratory and a stage, a place where preparation and observation intertwined, shaping the trajectory of her next steps. As the evening approached and the golden light faded into the soft hues of dusk, Emma felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had reinforced her autonomy, cultivated new alliances, and strengthened her awareness of the power she now wielded in silence. Each decision, each measured action, each carefully observed detail contributed to a growing momentum that would position her advantageously, setting the stage for the eventual moment when her presence, influence, and strategic insight would converge into an undeniable assertion of control and self-determination. Emma received the invitation to the gala with a calm hand and a measured breath, the envelope thick and embossed, hinting at the significance of the event she was about to attend. She laid it on the polished kitchen counter, her eyes following the morning light that streamed through the large windows, casting sharp lines across the floor and highlighting the precision with which she moved through her space. Her preparation was meticulous. Every choice of attire, every accessory, every step calculated to convey authority, poise, and subtle command. She dressed in a tailored dress that flowed just enough to suggest elegance without flamboyance, pairing it with understated jewelry that caught the light in fleeting, deliberate flashes. Her hair was styled with careful attention, strands softly framing her face, her expression composed and alert. As she stepped outside, the air was crisp, the city streets already alive with the morning rush, cars rolling past and pedestrians weaving along the sidewalks, yet she moved with a rhythm distinct from the chaos, each footstep deliberate, resonant, with quiet confidence. Ethan awaited at the entrance, his posture relaxed but radiating the subtle energy of someone accustomed to influence, his gaze meeting hers in a brief, silent exchange that spoke volumes of alignment and understanding. They entered the venue together, their movements synchronized, flowing seamlessly through the crowd, each greeting, each acknowledgement, executed with understated precision. The room itself was alive with muted conversations, the soft clink of glasses and the gentle hum of activity forming a backdrop to Emma's strategic observation. She noted familiar faces, tracing networks of influence, and assessing the potential of each interaction, allowing her presence to communicate authority without the need for overt words. Jason and Olivia were already present, their laughter bright and conspicuous, but Emma's gaze passed over them, registering their positions and expressions with calm, analytical attention. Every detail mattered. The angle of Jason's head as he spoke, Olivia's gestures, the subtle shift in the crowd's focus, and the way attention gravitated toward or away from them. Emma positioned herself near the edge of the main hall, allowing a subtle shift in presence to ripple through the room. Conversations continued around her, but the awareness of her composed confidence altered dynamics imperceptibly, commanding recognition through poise rather than declaration. Ethan moved beside her when necessary, their quiet coordination reinforcing the sense of strategic control that Emma had cultivated over the weeks since reclaiming her autonomy. She spoke sparingly, asking pointed questions and offering observations that guided the flow of interactions, her timing impeccable, each word weighted with understated authority. The gala continued, a carefully choreographed dance of attention, awareness, and presence, with Emma observing, engaging, and influencing without raising her voice or disrupting the subtle equilibrium of the room. As the evening advanced, light from the chandeliers reflected off polished surfaces, casting soft highlights that seemed to follow her movements, accentuating the quiet power she radiated. Emma understood fully that victory did not come from confrontation but from precise positioning, subtle influence, and the unspoken acknowledgement of her presence, all of which set the stage for the unfolding moments where control, strategy, and recognition converged in her favor, leaving Jason and Olivia to reckon with the undeniable shift she had orchestrated. Emma entered the grand hall with deliberate calm, the soft echo of her heels against the marble floor marking her presence before her eyes even scanned the room. The gala was in full swing, chandeliers glittering above, the low hum of conversation wrapping around the tables and clusters of elegantly dressed guests. Jason was near the center, Olivia at his side, laughter spilling naturally, exuding confidence and the ease of those unaware of the shift that had begun. Emma moved along the perimeter, her posture impeccable, every step a quiet assertion of presence, drawing subtle attention without seeking it, her gaze scanning patterns of influence, noting the flow of attention and the unspoken hierarchies. She felt the weight of her preparation settle into her movements, the result of weeks of strategic positioning, silent observation, and deliberate cultivation of timing and alliances. Ethan was beside her, a discreet anchor, his presence reinforcing the subtle energy that began to ripple outward from Emma, a force felt more than seen. She allowed a brief smile, acknowledging the familiar faces she passed, offering a grace that commanded respect, not through volume or confrontation, but through composure and poise. Conversations paused briefly as her path crossed clusters of guests, a soft murmur acknowledging her, recognition that she was not merely an observer, but a participant whose influence, though understated, could not be ignored. Jason's eyes flicked toward her, a flash of unease hidden behind practiced smiles, while Olivia's gaze sharpened, the first instinctive recognition of the imbalance in attention, subtle yet undeniable. Emma paused near the main table, her presence commanding without overt effort, and for a moment, the room's rhythm seemed to shift, the flow of chatter adjusting to the quiet authority she radiated. She exchanged a few words with Ethan, their interaction brief and precise, signaling alignment and mutual understanding without drawing attention. The sound of glasses clinking and subdued laughter continued around her, yet every movement she made, each tilt of her head, each subtle gesture, carried weight, influencing perception and attention in ways that went unnoticed by those untrained to observe. She watched as Jason gestured toward Olivia, unaware that the focus of many guests had shifted slightly, drawn by Emma's composure, her quiet confidence, and the invisible command she exercised over her own space. Every detail mattered: the angle of a head, the lift of a glass, the direction of a glance, and Emma measured them all, storing information for later use, weaving it into the narrative she had constructed silently over weeks. The evening light cast long reflections on the polished floors, mirroring the tension and anticipation building beneath her calm exterior, and Emma felt the satisfaction of precision, the quiet thrill of a plan unfolding as intended. She did not need to speak loudly, to confront, or to demand recognition. Her presence alone conveyed the narrative of control, foresight, and strategic positioning. Each movement, each glance, each carefully measured interaction was a statement of authority and patience, a signal to those who observed closely that she had returned not as a participant in the past, but as a force that would shape the present, recalibrating the balance of influence around her and leaving Jason and Olivia to recognize, silently and belatedly, the subtle but undeniable power she now wielded. The room fell into a hushed anticipation as Emma's presence shifted the air without a single word. She moved closer to the center of the gala, the light catching the subtle shimmer of her dress, reflecting not extravagance but precision, every detail intentional. Conversations paused momentarily as guests noticed the quiet authority she exuded, a presence that demanded recognition without demanding attention. Jason's confident smile faltered, the first cracks appearing in the mask of composure he had maintained so effortlessly throughout the evening. Olivia's eyes widened imperceptibly, the realization dawning that the equilibrium of the room had shifted, subtly but unmistakably. Emma took a deliberate step forward, positioning herself beside Ethan, whose calm, poised demeanor reinforced the understated power she now wielded. The crowd began to sense a change, the rhythm of social interaction bending around her silent authority, the careful orchestration of movement, observation, and timing coming to fruition. She raised her glass in a polite, almost casual gesture, yet it carried the weight of influence and intention, drawing eyes toward her without a word, a demonstration of the control she had cultivated through careful observation and strategic patience. Jason glanced at her, unease creeping into the periphery of his confidence, while Olivia's posture shifted subtly, an unconscious acknowledgement of Emma's presence and the power it conveyed. Emma exchanged a brief look with Ethan, their silent communication carrying volumes, a signal that the plan was unfolding as intended. She navigated through the crowd with measured steps, nodding to acquaintances, acknowledging familiar faces, her composed expression masking the deliberate assessment of each interaction, each glance, each subtle exchange of influence. The soft murmur of voices resumed around her, but a noticeable attention had shifted, a gravitational pull toward the calm authority she projected. Emma's awareness extended to every corner of the room, noting the flow of attention, the clustering of guests, the angles of conversation, all elements of a dynamic social landscape she had learned to interpret and guide without overt action.
IS đã hết thời gian chờ gửi tin nhắn. Vui lòng thử lại.
The gala had reached its peak, the room alive with laughter, soft conversation, and the shimmering reflections from the chandeliers overhead. Emma stood near the edge of the main hall, her posture calm and assured, observing the interactions around her, every movement deliberate, every glance measured, a quiet force in the midst of social energy. Jason and Olivia were engaged in conversation with a small group, laughter spilling. Yet Emma noticed subtle shifts, the direction of attention, the tilt of heads, the momentary pause in speech as her presence drew notice without demand. Ethan stayed close, a silent anchor beside her, his subtle nods and gestures coordinating seamlessly with her awareness, reinforcing a presence that was understated but impossible to ignore. Emma allowed herself a small, controlled smile, the corners of her lips lifting as she saw the first signs of recognition on Jason's face, a flicker of unease passing briefly before it was masked with practiced composure. The room seemed to bend slightly around her, as if the rhythm of conversation and movement adjusted unconsciously to her presence. She took a slow step forward, observing how the subtle shift in attention amplified, conversations momentarily paused, guests turning slightly to acknowledge her, not with overt greeting, but with the unspoken understanding of influence. Emma's eyes found Jason again, noting the slight tension in his posture, Olivia's alert expression, the faint sense of disorientation that her calm authority created. She did not speak, did not confront, allowing the environment itself to communicate the narrative she had constructed through weeks of careful preparation and silent observation. Each gesture she made, each tilt of her head, each intentional movement contributed to a tapestry of influence and perception that repositioned her as a commanding presence. Ethan's hand brushed briefly against hers, a quiet signal of alignment, and she allowed the moment to resonate, letting the room feel the subtle yet undeniable shift in dynamic. Emma walked past groups of guests, each exchange measured, every interaction precise, the air around her charged not with noise or spectacle, but with controlled, deliberate authority. Jason and Olivia's attempts at maintaining composure were undermined not by confrontation but by the quiet, pervasive acknowledgement of Emma's presence, the invisible current of recognition and respect that could not be denied. As she moved through the space, she noted the positioning of influential attendees, the way attention lingered slightly longer than usual, the subtle signs that her carefully orchestrated re-entry into this environment was working. The evening's light softened, shadows lengthening across the marble floors, casting reflections that mirrored the quiet tension and anticipation coiling in the room. Emma paused near the window, watching the city lights begin to twinkle as dusk settled in, the energy of the gala aligning with the momentum she had built, each moment contributing to a sense of inevitability and control. Her breath was steady, her posture perfect, her awareness acute, absorbing every reaction, every glance, every shift in attention, and weaving them into the silent narrative of triumph. She understood fully that victory did not need to be announced. It needed only to be observed, and the room itself, with its subtle adjustments and quiet acknowledgement, bore witness to the undeniable reclamation of power, presence, and self, leaving Jason and Olivia to face the truth without confrontation, realizing silently that Emma had not merely returned, she had risen, entirely on her own terms.